The girl who drew what others couldn't see. 5 hours earlier. The sun hadn't yet climbed over the city skyline when Darius Vaughn arrived at Street Meridian Children's Hospital, his third visit in 24 hours. He parked his black Bentley crooked outside the ER entrance, ignoring the valet's protests. He didn't look like a billionaire CEO. Not today. His perfectly tailored suit jacket hung off his frame like it didn't belong there anymore. The shine on his leather shoes had long faded. His tie was gone. His hands trembled slightly as he clutched a cold cup of vending machine coffee, which he hadn't even sipped. Inside, nurses bustled, doctors barked instructions, and monitors beeped urgently. But for Darius, it all blurred into static. All he could see was his son, Cameron Vaughn, age 8. Just a week ago, he was chasing butterflies in the backyard. Now he was unconscious in ICU, his heart rate dropping lower with every passing hour, and no one could say why. Organ failure, unexplainable seizure activity, unresponsive to standard treatments. The doctors repeated words that sounded important, but hollow. Darius had bought the best, transferred Cameron to the top hospital, flew in specialists from around the globe, paid them double their asking price. Triple. None of it mattered. And now he was cracking, one hairline fracture at a time. Outside the hospital, the early light painted long, tired shadows across the sidewalk. Darius sat slumped on a bench beside the emergency bay, the collar of his shirt open, his eyes bloodshot. And that's when he heard the voice. "I know how to save your son." He looked up sharply. No cameras, no paparazzi. Just a girl, maybe 7, thin as a twig, big glasses too large for her small face. Her hair was done in 2 puffy braids, one lopsided. She wore mismatched socks and an oversized hoodie with a cartoon frog on it. And she was holding a sketchbook. Darius blinked. "Excuse me." The girl tilted her head. "You didn't hear me. I said, I know how to save your son." He stared at her. This must be a joke, a cruel trick. Some kid who wandered away from pediatrics. "Look, sweetheart," he said gently, the way a broken man speaks to a bird he's afraid to scare away. "This isn't the time. My son's in there, and I know," she interrupted. "I've been watching. I drew it." She held out her sketchbook. Darius frowned. "You drew it?" He didn't know what made him reach for the sketchbook, only that his hands moved before his mind caught up. The first page showed a stick figure boy lying in a hospital bed, surrounded by machines. Cameron. The second page showed a woman entering the room, a nurse by the looks of the scrubs. The third had a red X over the IV line, and the words, "Wrong med, wrong time, every time." Darius turned more pages, each one marked with dates and times. 7:45 p.m. Same nurse, same medication. 8:32 p.m. Another appearance, another IV swap. 9:10 p.m. Cameron's monitor began to spike. He flipped faster. Dozens of drawings, dozens of timestamps, all perfectly aligned, all showing the same pattern. How do you know this?" he asked, breath-catching. The girl didn't smile. "Because nobody sees what I see. Not the doctors, not the nurses. They're always moving too fast. But I just sit. I watch." She looked down at her own chest. Beneath her hoodie, Darius now noticed a small monitor blinking under her shirt. "I have a broken heart too," she whispered. Literally. Her name was Melia. She didn't have much. No parents, no insurance, no priority on the surgery list, but she had eyes sharper than any camera, a mind wired to see what others missed, and a sketchbook that held more truth than any hospital file ever could. Darius flipped to the final page. A nurse. Tall, blonde hair tied in a bun. Same badge every time. The drawing showed her injecting something into Cameron's IV, then quickly glancing left, then right. In the corner, Melia had written, 9:17 p.m. Every night. She changes the meds. Darius's blood turned cold. That time matched perfectly with when Cameron's episodes always began. The seizures, the blood pressure drops. He looked at Melia again, as if seeing her for the first time. "You're saying this, nurse. She's doing something to my son." Melia nodded slowly. "She's doing it to others too. Kids like me. Kids who look like me. She never looks me in the eye when she passes by. But I see her, and I draw." Darius was silent for a long moment. The hospital behind him buzzed with urgency, but the bench they sat on was frozen in time. Finally, he said, "Show me everything, every sketch, every timestamp. We're going to stop this." The girl they never noticed, until it was too late. He used to sign billion-dollar deals with a handshake. Now, Darius Vaughn was about to declare war on a system that ignored the quietest voice in the hospital, the voice of a girl who couldn't save herself, but had just saved his son. 12 hours earlier, Dr. Jonah Renner didn't believe in superstition. He believed in data, numbers, reports, charts. That's what made him the hospital's chief of pediatrics. But something about what he was reading on the printout didn't feel like a coincidence. Cameron Vaughn's vitals had dipped 3 times in the last week, always within 10 minutes of medication updates, always after the same nurse's shift. Nurse Delaney Foster. He remembered her. 10 years of glowing evaluations. Never a raised concern. Never a complaint. Always composed. Always careful. Almost too perfect. He turned the page and saw something he couldn't ignore. A child's sketch. A timestamp. A match. He looked at the name scrawled in the corner of the drawing in bright purple crayon. Melia J. Room 6A. Dr. Renner rose from his desk. Meanwhile, in the pediatric wing, Melia sat on her hospital bed, legs crisscrossed, as rain tapped gently against the window beside her. Her sketchbook was open across her lap, but today she wasn't drawing. She was listening. From the hallway came soft voices. Miss Trudy, the night nurse, was speaking with a social worker. They were talking about her. Again. "She's been here 3 times in 6 months. Trudy whispered. "Heart arrhythmia's worse now. She's on the surgery list, but the case isn't considered urgent. There's just too many children ahead of her." Melia's fingers tightened around her pencil. She didn't cry. Not anymore. Instead, she flipped to a new page in her sketchbook and began to draw. Not her hospital room, not even her favorite nurse. She drew a door. A locked one, with herself on one side and something glowing behind it. At the same time, Darius was in a small conference room across the hospital. "Let me get this straight," said Dr. Renner, frowning. "You're accusing a senior nurse of deliberate malpractice, based on the sketches of a child." Darius placed the sketchbook between them, open to a page where Nurse Delaney was drawn switching a syringe, her face marked with a red X. "Not just a child," Darius replied. "The only person who's been consistently paying attention. She's got every timestamp. And when you compare it to Cameron's records..." Dr. Renner interrupted. "I did compare. And yes, there are patterns, troubling ones." He leaned back. "But we can't confront her. Not yet. If we spook her, she'll cover her tracks. Or worse, harm another child. So what do we do?" Dr. Renner tapped his pen against the table. "We quietly increase surveillance. Cameras near med stations, log every dose, every room entry, and we keep Melia safe." Darius's jaw tightened. "She's not safe." Dr. Renner looked grim. "If Nurse Delaney's behavior is intentional, and she figures out who's been watching her, Melia becomes a threat." Cut to Nurse Delaney in the supply closet. Alone. She closed the cabinet slowly and looked at the note slipped under the door. Just one sentence. "He knows." Her fingers curled around the note. She looked up, eyes narrowing. She'd been careful. She'd covered her tracks. The doses were small, unnoticeable, just enough to push things in the direction she wanted. redirect resources, control the outcomes. But someone had been watching, and she intended to find out who. Later that night, Malia was sketching the same hallway for the 5th time when her door creaked open. A nurse stepped in, but not one she recognized. Not Miss Trudy. Not Nurse Carla with the squeaky shoes. No, this nurse was new, or had never come into her room before. She was tall, pale, blonde hair in a tight bun, badge turned inward, hands hidden in the pockets of her jacket. "Malia, right," she said softly. "I just wanted to check on you." Malia's heart monitor beeped faster. The girl didn't respond. The nurse smiled, but her eyes didn't. "Can I see what you're drawing?" Malia's fingers tightened around her sketchbook. She shook her head. The nurse stepped closer. Just one step too many. Malia pulled her blanket up over her knees and sat taller. "You're not supposed to be in here," she said quietly. There was silence. Then, "I see. You're the little artist, aren't you?" And in that one moment, Malia knew. She knows. The nurse's eyes narrowed. "Be careful what you see, Malia. Sometimes people see things, and then they disappear." Then she turned and walked out, as if nothing had happened. The next morning, Malia didn't wait. She left her breakfast untouched, slipped out of bed, and walked straight to the security desk outside the ICU. "Tell Mr. Vaughn I need to see him," she said. The guard blinked, confused. "You mean Mr. Darius Vaughn?" She nodded. "I have something new. Something he needs to know." Cut to Darius and Dr. Renner reviewing new footage. The camera inside the ICU showed Nurse Delaney walking in at 9:15 p.m. No scheduled meds. No calls from the attending doctor. And yet, she adjusted Cameron's IV. Again. Then the monitor spiked. Again. Dr. Renner paled. "She's not just reckless. She's methodical. Deliberate." Darius stood. "I want her off the floor. Now." "We can't." "Not yet," Dr. Renner replied. "But give me 24 hours. We're putting a plan in place. And it starts with Malia." Back in her room, Malia sat with someone new. Her name was Detective Naomi Brooks, a hospital investigator in plain clothes. She asked simple questions. Malia gave simple answers. "When did you start noticing the patterns?" 2 weeks ago." "Why didn't you say anything?" Nobody asked. They never do. Detective Brooks looked through the sketchbook. "Malia, you realize this could save a lot more than one boy." Malia looked up from her lap. "I know, but I can't save anyone if I don't get my heart fixed first." That silenced the room. Because even heroes need saving sometimes. That night, security was increased. Nurse Delaney's movements were watched, and Malia was moved to a new room, closer to the nurse's station. But just after midnight, someone disabled a hallway camera, and someone in scrubs entered the pediatric wing using a generic staff badge. Malia was awake, sketching in bed. She heard footsteps. The sound stopped at her door. The handle turned. They ignored the girl. But she knew too much to be left alive. Some people go their whole lives without being seen. But when someone finally sees too much, suddenly, they become a target. The door handle turned with the slow, deliberate rhythm of someone trying not to be heard. Inside the room, Malia had stopped sketching, her pencil frozen midline. She didn't breathe, didn't blink, just listened. Click. The lock turned. The door inched open. A figure stepped into the room, wearing scrubs. Pale blue. No name tag. Malia's heart monitor picked up. She slid her sketchbook quietly under her blanket and gripped the bedrail with both hands. The figure stopped, frozen in the doorway. Then, a voice. "Malia?" It was Nurse Trudy. Malia blinked. Her grip loosened slightly. Trudy stepped in, eyes wide. "Sweetheart, you okay? You're supposed to be in the new room." Malia didn't answer right away. Then she whispered, Why did you move me back here? Trudy shook her head. I didn't. They said you were moved here because of special security. But you just used your badge to come in, Melia said quietly. No one else should have access. Trudy's face slowly drained of color. She turned and looked at the open hallway. And then both of them realized. Someone else had used a master override to open the door earlier. Someone who'd never left. Moments later, hospital security office. The replay of the hallway footage made Darius's blood run cold. At 11:59 p.m., the hallway camera glitched, the screen going black for exactly 63 seconds. When it returned, Melia's door was ajar. And no one was there. Or so it seemed. But someone had clearly entered. Check internal access logs, Darius said sharply. Who used a badge near that room during the blackout? The tech clicked keys rapidly. Looks like Nurse Trudy at 12:03. And wait, there's a system override at 12:01 a.m. No ID logged. Someone bypassed the lock manually. Dr. Renner stared at the screen. Which means someone was in that room before Nurse Trudy even arrived. Where is she now? Darius asked, already moving for the door. Meanwhile, back in Melia's room. Melia sat up straight as Nurse Trudy called security. And then she saw it. The closet. A small janitor's closet inside her room. Barely noticeable. But the door was slightly open. Melia's skin prickled. Before she could say anything, a hand slid silently out of the closet and reached for her IV. She screamed. Trudy dropped the phone. Two things happened at once. The closet door burst open and a figure lunged forward. The room's overhead lights flicked on as two hospital security guards charged in with tasers drawn. The intruder, a person in stolen scrubs, face covered, grabbed Melia's IV stand and swung it at one of the guards. But backup arrived quickly, and in under 30 seconds, it was over. They pinned the intruder to the ground and yanked the mask off. Gasps filled the room. It was Nurse Delaney Foster. ICU waiting area, 1:12 a.m. Dr. Renner paced furiously. She tampered with her ID logs. She spoofed badge access. That takes serious knowledge. She didn't act alone, Darius said quietly. People like that rarely do. The two men turned as Detective Naomi Brooks arrived, expression tight. Delaney Foster is in custody, but the investigation doesn't stop there. We've got her home computer, her locker contents, and we're requesting a court order for her financial records. Darius's voice hardened. Check if she's connected to any outside entities, insurance companies, medical competitors, biased organizations, anything. Naomi nodded. We're going to tear her world apart, but there's something you should know. She opened a folder. Inside were copies of Melia's earliest sketches. The first one was dated 7 weeks ago. She's been watching longer than she let on. Morning light, 6:55 a.m. Melia lay in bed, her chest sore from where the IV line had been pulled. She was quiet, not sketching, not talking, just watching the sun creep across the curtain. Darius stepped in, unsure how she'd respond after the night's events. She turned her head. Is she gone? He nodded. They arrested her. She won't come near you again. Melia blinked slowly. She was going to kill me. Yes, he said softly. But she didn't, because you were brave enough to speak up, brave enough to see what others couldn't. I wasn't brave, Melia whispered. I was scared the whole time. Then you were the bravest person in the entire building. Cut to hospital boardroom, 11:00 a.m. Dr. Renner stood at the head of the table, flanked by Detective Brooks and Darius Vaughn. On the screen behind them, unauthorized medical access, 14 confirmed cases, suppressed complaints, 9 formal, 3 anonymous. Common factor, Nurse Delaney Foster. But the final slide hit harder than any of the others. Primary source of discovery, patient observation log, created by Melia J., age 7. A hush fell over the room. Someone at the far end whispered, "A child exposed what we missed." "No," Darius said clearly. "A child showed us what we chose not to look at." Later that evening, Detective Brooks returned to Melia's room with news. "You helped us crack more than one case," she said. "Delaney's past behavior was overlooked for years. Your sketches, your drawings, matched things we never documented." Melia didn't say much, but she smiled for the first time in days. A real one. Then she reached for her pencil. "I want to draw something new now." Final scene. Melia's sketchbook opens to a fresh page. This time, there's no hospital bed, no IV lines, no red X or dark hallways. This page shows a door wide open, sunlight flooding in, and a girl standing in the light, smiling. They fixed her room, but not her place in the world. They replaced the curtains. They'd brought her books and flowers. They called her a hero, but no one fixed the wait list she was still at the bottom of. No one scheduled her surgery, not even after she saved everyone else. 3 days after Nurse Delaney's arrest, a hospital was buzzing. Reporters camped outside. Staff walked more carefully. Administrators whispered in hallways. Dr. Renner was fielding calls from the board, lawyers, and media outlets. They wanted to know how a 7-year-old girl exposed what their entire oversight committee had missed. Darius Vaughn had spoken briefly to the press, just enough to protect Melia's privacy, enough to shift focus off his son and onto the one who'd saved him. But in room 6B, where Melia now stayed, the excitement hadn't changed a thing that really mattered. She still had the monitor under her shirt. She still felt her heartbeat skip sometimes, then crash into a sprint. She still hadn't been scheduled for surgery. Cut to hospital conference room. Dr. Renner sat with Darius and a woman in her mid-40s wearing an impeccable suit and a stern expression. Her name, Clarissa Kent, head of medical policy for the hospital group. "She's a child," Darius said flatly. "A child who saved patients, saved lives. You're telling me you can't move her up the surgical list?" Clarissa tapped her pen against a legal pad. "She's not critical. Her condition is manageable with medication. She flatlined 2 months ago. Once. For less than 30 seconds. Darius leaned forward. "You changed Cameron's entire care team after what Melia showed us. You opened a criminal investigation. You rewrote security protocols. But you still won't rewrite her priority." Clarissa's expression didn't change. "We have rules. That's how we stay fair." Darius exhaled slowly. "Your rules almost killed my son." Back in Melia's room, she sat on her bed, sketchbook open. But today, her pencil didn't move. Not even when Leo walked in. The boy, Darius's son, was healing. His cheeks were fuller, his voice stronger. He wore pajama pants with lightning bolts and carried a juice box like it was a trophy. He climbed into the visitor's chair. "You're mad," he said. "My dad's mad too." Melia didn't look up. Leo sipped his juice. "Dad says we're gonna fix it. All of it." Still nothing. Leo fumbled with something in his pocket, pulled out a crumpled piece of paper. A drawing. It was rough. A house with a crooked roof. 2 stick figures in front. One tall, one small. But the smaller one had glasses and puffy hair. "That's us," he said. Melia looked up. Her lips pressed into a thin line. "You forgot the heart monitor." Leo grinned. "Nah, you won't have it anymore. That's why I left it off." Melia blinked. And then she smiled. Just a little. Later that day, CEO's office. Clarissa Kent walked into her private office and nearly dropped her coffee. Darius was sitting in her chair. "You can't be in here," she said, startled. "I made a call," he said casually. "Board approved a private review of your policies. Turns out, when a major donor requested, doors open." She set the coffee down. "You're going to make a scene over one case. I'm going to rewrite the scene," he replied. "And here's how." He slid a file across her desk. Inside, a signed petition from 5 pediatricians. Letters from 3 families whose kids were mistreated under Foster's watch. A private medical evaluation of Melia's worsening condition. Clarissa scanned the first page. "This isn't protocol. This is pressure," Darius interrupted. "The same pressure I used to get your hospital national funding 5 years ago. Don't make me remind your board what it cost them last time they ignored a child in need." Silence. Clarissa looked at the file again. "I'll see what I can do." Back in pediatrics. That evening, Melia was drawing again. Not just the hospital or the hallways, but something different. A courtroom. 3 judges. A girl on the stand holding a sketchbook like a shield. Outside the window, the real sky turned pink with the setting sun. Miss Trudy came in carrying a small gift box. "This just came from downstairs," she said. Melia opened it slowly. Inside, a note, handwritten in thick, grown-up letters. "From someone who finally sees you. You're next on the list. Dr. Renner." Beneath it, a bright yellow pencil set, brand new, unsharpened. Cut to boardroom. Emergency meeting. Clarissa stood before the board, lips pressed tight. "We've approved a temporary policy exception," she announced. "Effective immediately, Melia Jennings will receive surgical priority." The room murmured. Further, the hospital is launching a review of all pediatric cases involving complaint dismissals, an initiative we're calling the Jennings Clause. Someone at the end asked, "And how will we explain this to the public?" A voice from the doorway answered, "We'll tell them a 7-year-old did your job better than you." It was Darius. He walked in holding a framed sketch. The same one Melia had drawn of Nurse Delaney leaning over Cameron's IV, time-stamped, labeled, and surrounded by shadows. She didn't need credentials, Darius said. She just needed someone to look at her drawings and believe her. Final scene, Melia's hospital room, midnight. She sat up, too excited to sleep. Her sketchbook open. The pages fluttered from the fan. Leah was beside her, snoring gently. Melia stared at the ceiling. Her monitor still beeped, but it wouldn't for long. She whispered into the dark, to no one and everyone. "I'm not just the girl who draws things. I'm the girl who changed everything." Pediatric wing. Early the next morning. The hallway was unusually quiet for 7 a.m. Usually, by now, nurses were prepping rounds, carts were rolling, machines were beeping, and sleepy patients were being poked awake for vitals. But today, everything felt still. Melia lay awake in her bed, staring at the ceiling. Her arms were folded behind her head. She didn't even reach for her sketchbook. The yellow pencil box sat untouched on her nightstand. She hadn't sharpened a single one, because a part of her still didn't believe it. She, a foster kid, quiet, fragile, rarely spoken to, was being prepped for a priority heart surgery. It didn't feel real. The sound of wheels echoed down the hallway. Miss Trudy appeared, pushing a small tray and smiling gently. Morning, sunshine. Melia turned her head slowly. "No pancakes today?" she asked dryly. Trudy chuckled. "Doctor's orders. Clear fluids till you're pre-op." Then, Trudy pulled a sealed envelope from her pocket. This came from a lawyer. Melia blinked. "Did I do something wrong?" "No, honey," Trudy said, crouching beside her bed. "It's not bad. It's different." Melia sat up slowly and opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter. Real ink. Not printed. Not typed. Asterisk, asterisk, dear Melia. My name is Alina Cross. I'm a lawyer who used to represent the hospital's pediatric board. I resigned last night. Your story woke something in me I thought I'd lost. I'd like to talk to you, when you're ready, about starting something together. A foundation. For girls like you. For voices that deserve to be heard, even when they speak in sketches. You don't owe anyone anything. But if you ever want to be part of something bigger, I think you already are. Sincerely, Elena. Melia stared at the paper. No one had ever asked her to start something before. They'd only ever asked her to wait. Scene. Outside the hospital. News crew interview. Reporter. Mr. Vaughn, is it true your son's recovery is due to the intervention of a fellow pediatric patient? Darius Vaughn nodded. Eyes steady. Yes. And I want to make it clear. It was not because the system worked. It was because one girl refused to be silent. Reporter. And what would you say to those who say she was just lucky? Darius. I'd say luck didn't make her memorize timestamps, or notice patterns, or risk her life to speak the truth. That wasn't luck. That was courage. He turned to the camera. And you haven't seen the last of her. Scene. Hospital cafeteria. Quiet corner booth. Dr. Renner sat with Dr. Chen and Dr. Martinez. On the table in front of them was Melia's full sketchbook. Every page, every timestamp, every drawing. Chen flipped through it slowly. She knew, Chen whispered. She saw more than we ever did. Martinez nodded. I feel like I failed her twice. Once as a doctor, and again when I looked at her chart and saw non-critical and didn't question it. Renner looked up. Then let's stop failing her and every other kid like her. He reached into his jacket and slid out a proposal packet. The Jennings Protocol, Draft 0.1. Establishing pediatric pattern observation programs across all partner hospitals, integrating child-driven insights into medical decisions, creating a permanent role for observation advocacy. Chen's hands trembled slightly. You're really going to name it after her? Yes, Renner said. Because when the system broke, she rebuilt it. With a pencil. Scene. Melia's room. That night. Leo sat cross-legged on her bed, flipping through one of her new sketchbooks. Why don't you use colors more? He asked, staring at her drawing of the hospital with long gray shadows. Because black and white tells the truth faster, she answered. Leo frowned. But truth can still have color, can't it? Melia didn't answer. But that night, after he fell asleep in the chair beside her bed, she picked up the yellow pencils for the first time. And she drew. A heart. Not just any heart. A real one. With lines, chambers, and scars. And inside it, a golden sun glowing faintly from the center. Scene. Operating room. The next morning. Melia lay on the surgical table. The bright lights above looked like stars in a galaxy she didn't quite understand. She wasn't afraid. Not anymore. Because even if something went wrong, even if her heart didn't restart, she knew she had changed something. Left proof that she existed, that she mattered. She looked at Dr. Chen and whispered, "Do me a favor." "Anything," Chen replied. "If it works, if I come back, can we hang one of my drawings in the hallway?" Dr. Chen smiled through misty eyes. "It's already framed." Final scene. Recovery room. Several hours later. The beeping was soft. Steady. She opened her eyes. Her chest ached. Her throat was dry. But her heart was still there. Still beating. Leo sat in the chair beside her again, clutching a stuffed bear in one hand and a juice box in the other. "You're late," she whispered. "You scared us," he whispered back. She tried to laugh, but winced instead. Then, from the window, she spotted something. A laminated sign hanging in the hallway. This hospital changed because she watched. This world changed because she drew. The Jennings clause. Everyone knew her name, but she still felt invisible. They clapped when she came back. They'd brought her flowers, cards, cameras. But Melia didn't want to be famous. She just wanted to matter even after the headlines faded. 1 week post-surgery. Melia Jennings sat in a sunlit corner of the hospital's new pediatric activity room. She had her sketchbook open, a soft fleece blanket across her lap, and a new pair of red-framed glasses sliding down her nose. She looked older now, not because of her body, but because of what she'd seen, what she'd done. She had survived. But somehow, survival felt lonelier than expected. Because now, everyone looked at her differently. Doctors bowed their heads respectfully when they passed her in the hallway. Other patients whispered about the girl with the pencils as she rolled by. Even nurses who used to ignore her now offered extra pudding cups and called her sweetheart, like she hadn't once been invisible. She was a hero now, but it didn't feel like she belonged. She missed being overlooked. She missed the silence. Cut to hospital boardroom. Jennings Claus committee meeting. Darius sat at the long table beside Dr. Chen, flipping through a folder labeled Pilot Results, Observation-Based Pediatric Notes. The Jennings Clause was officially live at 5 hospitals. Instead of just vital signs and behavior reports, nurses were now required to log nonverbal cues, especially those observed by young patients. Any resistance from staff? Darius asked. Chen nodded. Some. But it's not about resistance. It's about retraining perception. Darius looked up. Perception is exactly why we're here. He turned the folder to a new page. A crayon drawing of a nurse crying in the supply room. Time-stamped. Labeled. Drawn by another child. She saw something, Chen whispered. And she's not the only one. Back in pediatrics. That afternoon, Leo helped Melia wheel her chair to the garden patio. She was stronger now, but still sore. He carried a bag of colored pencils and a sandwich in a box shaped like a dinosaur. You're gonna have your own exhibit, he told her, plopping down beside her on a bench. Dad said they're framing your whole sketchbook. Melia didn't respond. You okay? She stared straight ahead, not blinking. Everyone wants me to draw something. For them. Like I'm a magic printer. You're not a printer, Leo said. You're a truth teller. Melia glanced at him. But what if I don't want to tell the truth anymore? Silence. Then Leo nodded slowly. Then maybe, draw something untrue. Melia blinked. Like a lie. Leo shrugged. No. Like a dream. Later that night. Pediatric observation room. Miss Trudy was finishing her shift when she saw the new girl. Quiet. Maybe 6 years old. Curly hair and puffs. Big eyes. Name: Miriam T. Transferred last night from a rural clinic. Diagnosis: unexplained seizures. Still under evaluation. Trudy crouched beside her. Hey there, pumpkin. You settling in? Miriam didn't speak, just held something close to her chest. A folded piece of paper. Trudy smiled and moved on. But what she didn't see was Miriam glancing after her, then quickly sliding the folded paper under her pillow. Scene: Darius's office. Evening. He sat reading Amara's proposal. She'd returned from law school early to help him set up a national foundation in Melia's name. It's ambitious, she said, pacing. But it's needed. She paused. Have you told her yet? Darius looked down. No. She's still healing. He pulled out a box from his drawer. Inside, a blank sketchbook, hand-stitched with leather. On the cover, in gold. Not just a witness. I want to give this to her when she's ready. Scene: Melia's room. Midnight. The monitors beeped slowly. Rain tapped gently at the window. Melia sat up in bed, sketching again. But not the hospital. She was drawing. A lighthouse. Strong. Bright. Standing alone in the ocean. At the top, in the glowing room behind the lens, stood a girl with a pencil. The next morning, something changed. Miss Trudy was restocking the med cart when she heard a voice behind her. I saw it. She turned. It was Miriam. She held out a crumpled piece of paper. A drawing. Miss Trudy unfolded it carefully. Her eyes widened. The sketch was simple, but chilling. A figure, tall with square shoulders, injecting something into another patient's IV line. The time and date were marked in the corner. Trudy's mouth went dry. Miriam, "Who is this?" Miriam whispered. "He was wearing the coat with the green tag. Not blue. Green." That was an attending physician, not a nurse. Trudy ran. Scene: hospital security review. 2 hours later. Dr. Renner, Chen, and security staff watched the footage. They zoomed in. It was real. Just like before with Melia. No one had noticed. Until now. Darius arrived minutes later, eyes stormy. "Who is he?" The room fell silent. A whisper. "Dr. Calloway." Scene: pediatric hallway. Darius found Melia by the art wall. She was sketching her lighthouse again. He crouched beside her and held out the box. She looked at it without touching it. "You're not the only one anymore," he said softly. "Another girl saw something." She told the truth. Melia blinked. Will they listen to her? They already are. She stared at the box. Finally took it. Opened it. Ran her fingers along the gold title. "Not just a witness," she read aloud. And for the first time, she believed it. Final scene. Conference hall. Weeks later, a small crowd gathered at the National Pediatric Care Conference. On stage, a girl in red glasses approached the podium. She didn't say much. She didn't need to. Behind her, a screen lit up with a drawing. A hospital hallway. A nurse crying. A patient watching. A system listening. Beneath it, 3 words. "We see you." She wasn't just a patient. She was the one who changed the hospital forever. She was 7 when she drew her first sketch inside a hospital. She was 8 when she taught the whole system how to see again. 3 months later, it had been quiet. Not media quiet. Not internet quiet. Internally quiet. The kind of stillness that happens after a storm, but before justice. Melia had been back home with her new guardians for 6 weeks. Her surgery had gone well. Her recovery. Strong. But her world had changed in ways most adults could barely understand. She wasn't just a little girl anymore. She was the center of something massive. Scene: Vaughn Foundation office. A new wing was being built, named in her honor. But Melia didn't want marble plaques or golden letters. She wanted it to feel alive. Inside the office, Amara placed the final binder on the table. The Jennings model. Hospital 001 to 025 deployment plan. "We have buy-in from 5 new children's hospitals," she said. "Observation journals, sketch-based case logging, pattern validation units." Darius looked at the model blueprints of each child room. Windows in every one. A desk. Art supplies. She asked for windows, he said. And pencils that don't break. Scene: Miriam's follow-up interview. Miriam, the second child who spoke up, now had a voice of her own. Her seizures had reduced significantly. Turns out, her medication had been subtly altered too. By someone trusted. Dr. Calloway. Just like Gwen. Only smarter. More careful. But not careful enough. Because children like Miriam were watching now. Scene: Hospital Legal Tribunal. The hospital had convened a full tribunal, the first of its kind, reviewing pediatric malpractice through child-documented evidence. Dr. Calloway sat with his arms folded, confident, cold, until the drawings appeared. Not just Melia's, not just Miriam's, but from 6 other children across 3 wings. All of them had observed him, drawn him, time-stamped his mistakes. Melia sat quietly as the tribunal reviewed every page. She didn't testify. She didn't have to. Her silence had become louder than anything they'd ever heard before. Scene: Hospital wing. Reimagined. 1 month later, the ribbon was cut on the Jennings unit, a fully redesigned pediatric observation and expression center. No more ignored whispers. No more non-critical labels based on income or insurance. Every child had access to sketch journals, voice logs, expression tech, and personalized interaction advocates. In the center of the main hallway was a long wall of drawings. Children's art. truths told in color. And in the middle, one frame, kept exactly as it was, a black and white sketch of a nurse with a trembling hand, a boy in a hospital bed, a girl watching through a window. Beneath it, the drawing that changed everything. Malia Jennings, age 7. Scene: a national conference. 1 year later. Bright lights, big screen. Malia stepped out onto a TED-style stage. Older now, hair longer, glasses slightly too big. But her voice, steady, clear, quiet. And that made people listen harder. People say children don't notice what adults do. But sometimes they're the only ones who notice. We don't always use words. Sometimes we use pictures, or silence, or tears. But it's still communication. You just have to listen differently. She pulled out a single sketch, one no one had seen yet. A hospital hallway, bright and alive. Doctors and children side by side. A boy holding a girl's sketchbook. A nurse hugging a patient. A wall full of colors. At the top, in bold pencil, "This is the hospital I dreamed of." The room rose to its feet, not in loud applause, but in silent awe. Scene: 2 years later. A new arrival. At a brand new hospital in Chicago, founded on the Jennings model, a child walked in, eyes wide with fear. She said nothing, didn't speak for days, but a nurse gave her a sketchbook on day 1. By day 3, she drew something troubling. A staff member yelling. A tray swapped. The staff took it seriously, followed up, and saved a boy from an allergic reaction that had almost been fatal. The nurse who handled it, who believed the drawing immediately. Miriam, now a teen, now a nurse in training, inspired by the girl who had changed her life with nothing but a pencil. Final scene: a classroom. Some years later. Malia Jennings, now 14, stood at the front of a classroom of younger kids. It wasn't a school. It was part of the National Youth Watch program, a system that trained kids to track hospital care patterns, trust their senses, and speak up safely. She held her original sketchbook in her hands. The pages were tattered, yellowed. She flipped it open, held it up. "This book changed a hospital," she said softly, "but not because it was good." She looked around the room. "It changed the hospital because I wouldn't stop drawing, even when no one was watching." A small girl raised her hand. "What happened to the nurse who did those bad things?" Malia smiled gently. "She's gone." A pause. "But now, good nurses use drawings too. They see things. They ask more questions. They listen better." Another boy raised his hand. "Why did you keep drawing if it didn't change anything at first?" Malia turned the page. A drawing of herself. Alone. In a hallway. Tiny. Underneath. "Because silence is loud too." Fade out. Narrator. "They tried to overlook her. Tried to say she was just a kid. Just a patient. Just an observer. But she was none of those things. She was the storm before the change. The proof that watching is action. That drawing is truth. And that being small never means you're not powerful." Black screen. White text. Inspired by the quiet ones. The watchers. The sketchers. The kids who see everything and still believe.